This is Tucker Booth back here with Rappers Don't Golf, Volume 2. And I've got another monolith of the golf broadcasting world who has graced me with his presence by phone today. We're hanging out on the phone with Peter Kessler, who put Golf Channel and Sirius XM Golf on the map. He also was the voice of HBO Sports for 5 years. He invented the hybrid club. You might have seen him on some infomercials back in the day. And you surely saw him talking to some of the most legendary golfers, broadcasters, and entertainers of all time. I'm very proud to introduce Peter Kessler. Peter, how you doing?
I am so thrilled to be with you, and the reason we're doing this is obviously because we're already friends and there isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. But you have me a little bit of a disadvantage because now your fans know who I might be, but a lot of my fans don't actually know who you might be. So could we have the 60 seconds on you, please?
Oh, look at this. I'm getting interviewed by the interviewer. All right. Yeah. Peter, I was reading quite a bit about you, and what I was struck by time and again from these profiles is how much you and I have in common in our background. I grew up loving classic rock, which I know you did and were inspired by. I learned to sing at birth just about. I was performing in talent shows from kindergarten on. I learned to play piano at 7. I learned to play guitar at 10. And I was writing my own music on both very shortly thereafter. I started my first band when I was 12. I went on and studied theater, improv, music, writing, mass communication, journalism. I edited my college newspaper. I performed in plays. I went to Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, and was in the Magic Flute. I've done 12th Night as Sebastian. I then kind of pivoted out of college at 22 and decided I was going to go from trying to go after an education degree to the streets of St. Louis, Missouri, nearby where I lived, and started playing street music out in front of the record store and out in front of the coffee shop for about 7 years. I played 8 to 12 hours every day. And during that time, I not only built an organic fan base, but I started my own record label out of St. Louis that made independent rock and hip-hop music called the Frozen Food Section. We put out over 40 original albums. I put out over 15 of my own. I also won 12 freestyle rap battles in 4 different states, and am largely considered one of the top 10 best freestyle battle rappers in St. Louis, Missouri history. I also then moved to Los Angeles in 2007 and started going after a music and entertainment career that has gotten a lot broader than just songwriting and putting out rock and hip hop albums. I've done voiceover acting. I now am getting my first writing credit for The Detour, which is a show produced by Jason Jones and Samantha Bee on TBS. I have 2 scripts currently in development. I have just been cast to act and do the soundtrack production for an independent film that's already in development stage. And I am also writing golf and football blogs for Blitzed NFL and From the Back Tees, and really sinking my teeth into getting to speak with cool individuals like yourself.
Well, it's funny. Our friend Leonardo da Vinci would say, well, Tucker, okay, so you can do 30 things really well, but if you really want to be great, it's got to be 50. That's the problem. When you're really creative, you get this muse and it says to you, okay, that was really good. Now what are you going to do? Let me just ask you one last question, then you can turn the tables. Of all the roles that you played on a stage from the time you were a little boy to the most recent one, what was your favorite part that you played?
That is a great question. I'd say of all the roles I played on stage, and I'm not even being pretentious, Peter, my favorite one was Tucker Booth. Because Tucker Booth isn't just the man, the myth, the legend. Tucker Booth became things that Tucker Booth is not. And it's crazy when you're in the hip-hop world and everybody's got an alter ego moniker and they're all MC Rappity Rap. And I'm going by Tucker Booth. I became a lot more than just Tucker Dale Booth. I became a lot of things. And I know from reading some of your stuff, I think you can kind of meet me there. It becomes method acting, being yourself. And I think that, if I was going to just throw, the name of one of these plays I did, I would say probably some of my favorite roles. I played Franck, the wedding coordinator and father of the bride. That was pretty fun. I played Sir Toby Belch and Sebastian in 12th Night. But those were just, little kind of multi-dimensional characters. I feel like what I'm doing, like you said, is trying to play about 50 different roles at the same time. And I think you're one of the few people, Peter, that can understand this, man. Everybody always tells you in the industry, yeah, I know you're real good at all this different stuff, but you got to just pick one. You got to just be one guy. You got to be the guitar guy, or you got to be the rap guy, or you got to be the leading man guy. And I always said nuts to that, and that probably stunted my development in the industry at 21 when I was first out here. But I'll tell you, by 40 now, I'm turning 40 in June, I'm really finding that I can be all of these different things. And thanks to the age of information that we're now living in, where the internet is more important than, these old ways of doing things, I not only can do all these things, but I can profit and really develop at all these things. So I guess that's my long answer to that.
Well, it's a really exciting time, particularly at your age, because when I was 35, I woke up on that birthday, and I had been working in the securities industry on Wall Street, really as a public speaker and a marketer. I wasn't a stockbroker or anything like that. And I did a lot of community theater and stuff, and had always acted in plays like you did. I did everything in college and high school and summer camps and those things. But when I was 35, I woke up on that birthday and I said, that's it. I am not doing this anymore. I'm not happy. I don't like it. I don't fit. I don't want to wear a suit every day. I'm not going into Wall Street. And so I said, okay, you got 5 years to keep doing what you're doing, but to have broken into another industry where you then give the Wall Street stuff up. And by the time I was 39, 4 years later, I was the voice of HBO Sports. And then when I was 42, I joined the Golf Channel. So, stuff for me in terms of the entertainment industry really just started to happen at the age where you are right now. And so, you've been building all this stuff up for years. So you have, this wealth of content already to just keep moving forward from and exploring new areas of entertainment. And yes, you do everything you think you can think of. You do everything that you can think of. You go ahead and you put it in and you do the best you can. You try to do it all in one take. But so I understand perfectly where you are in terms of the age thing, and you've got your, the future is largely ahead of you at this point. So I'm excited for you, and I was excited for me at that time because I met the goal of the 40 thing, and then the Golf Channel thing happened, and so I was able to make what should have been a particularly difficult conversion, and it went very easily. My mother said when the Golf Channel went on the air the first night, it was my first time doing something on TV, on camera, and my first guest was, of course, Arnold Palmer. So my mom calls me that night, and she said, everybody else who's in the entertainment industry, don't they start with the weather in Des Moines? She said, get the star of a new Golf Channel interviewing Arnold. She said, this is completely insane. She said, but knowing you, totally predictable.
So you mentioned Arnold Palmer. I wanted to go there as soon as possible. You essentially, with Arnold Palmer and Joe Gibbs, were one of the first 3 in the door at Golf Channel back in the mid-90s when they started this full-time 24-hour Golf Channel. And you were the face of the first 3 most watched shows on Golf Channel, if I'm correct. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you forged that relationship with Arnold and Joe, and about your early days there as the main face, voice, and anchor for Golf Channel?
Well, it was really interesting because I had been living in New York since 1980, and in 94, when I was the voice of HBO Sports, which paid nothing because you only go in 4 times a year on a Friday afternoon. I mean, how many times can you say this has been a presentation of HBO Sports? So not very many. So it wasn't a high-paying gig, but it was, a nice profile gig, and the stuff that I got to narrate, was really super high profile and had a big cult following and still does today. And the documentaries that I narrated were all, I won Peabodys and Emmys and Ace Awards for When It Was a Game, a baseball film. Actually, I did part 2 as well, and a boxing trilogy. So the guy who produced the I never forced my knowledge on anybody. And when I go play golf, I go to play golf, not to not play golf. And so at one point, he came to me, he goes, look, I was just hired to hire all the on-air people for the Golf Channel. Would you be interested in hosting our shows? And I said, yeah, I would like that. And he said, maybe we'll have a show where you can interview the greatest players or the greatest teachers. He said, you'll figure it out. And I said, yeah, that'd be good. So he moved down to Orlando in the summer of '94, and then he called me and he said, look, they won't let me hire you right now because you haven't been on camera. And he said, I told them about the plays and the public speaking and all that stuff. And they said, okay, we'll make the test his golf knowledge. And I went, great. I knew nobody knew more about golf history than I did. So they started calling me up at Wednesday night at like 3 a.m. and stuff. And, there was no Google, there was no going to look in books, and I'm sleeping in bed and no computer. And, so the first question was, who was the first famous female golfer? So I rolled over and I said, Mary, Queen of Scots. And they said, no, Babe Zaharias. I said, no, you asked the first famous female golfer. You didn't say anything about professional players. Mary, Queen of Scots, was pretty famous for playing golf. And remember that, she basically murdered her husband. The next day she cheated up and got in trouble for it and eventually was beheaded for other reasons. But that didn't help because she was determined to have shown a wanton and careless disregard for human life. So she was the first famous golfer. So they call me back the next day and go, oh, that's right. Okay, we found out. So this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Finally, they call me the last call, and they go, who is Sam Parks Jr.? Well, I knew more about Sam Parks Jr. than his mother did. He lived in the Pittsburgh area in the 30s. He was a professional. He was really a 75 shooter, but he lived close to Oakmont, where the Open was being held in 35. So for the few months before the Open, after the course opened up in the spring, in the north in Pittsburgh, he started playing 9 holes every day. And he was the first guy to measure off yardages. He went, well, why don't I just figure it out? So he would walk from a tree to the middle of the green to the back of the green and pick out the landmarks. He was the first guy to do yardage. And I said, and he, thinking 75s could win at Oakmont, then the hardest golf course in America, certainly at that time, and may still be now. He figured 75s would win, so he goes out and shoots 301, which is basically 475s, and he won the U.S. Open at Oakmont. They called the next day and said, okay, you've got the job. So, I knew nobody did that. So I drove down in November 90. Well, actually, I went to Latrobe in October of 94, and I spent 3 days with Arnold, and we became very, very fast friends. I'll give you a fast story. When the first morning we were together, after 3 or 4 hours, he knew that I was a different breed, and so it was a Monday, and we go down to the practice tee, and the course is closed, and so it was a club champ, the club pro, the next best player at the club, and me, and Arnold. So Arnold hits 3 balls. So he looks up at everybody, goes, okay, what am I doing differently? And the pro goes, I don't see anything. And the club champ said, I don't know. The other guy said, I don't know. And he looked at me, he said, what about you, hotshot? You think you know everything about me? And I said, well, I'll tell you what it is for $20. And he said, are you serious? I said, yeah, I'm absolutely serious. He said, okay, you're on. I said, okay, you've moved the position of your right foot. It used to be flared. Today, right now, it's absolutely perpendicular to the starting line of flight, isn't it, Arnold? And he gave me some look. Give me my 20. He said, we'll play for it. I said, not a chance. I have to carry you on the team. 10 things that happened that day like that, including hitting a ball through the windshield of his cart that had been sitting in it, would have killed him. It created a hole the size of a grapefruit, and the ball went over the clubs, over the steering wheel, through the plexiglass, went another 50 yards. Arnold picks up his cell phone. It's Joe Gibbs, the president of the Golf Channel, who I didn't even know his name. And he says, yeah, Joe, here with Pete. He just made his first hole-in-one. So he got off to a particularly fantastic start. So then I go down to Orlando in early November. And I start, every night everybody's going to Sam Snead's Tavern, and we're not going to go on the air till January. And so as I'm talking to people, I realize, well, for sure, nobody knew anything about golf, and if they did, it wasn't certainly the caliber that knowledge that I had. And then I didn't see anybody knew anything about television or how you're going to do shows or writing shows or producing or directing. And I went, well, okay, I know what it's supposed to be. You're going to interview Arnold, and then you're going to interview Sam and whoever. So you write the show, produce yourself, decide what the graphics and video ought to be, tell night. And I thought, after about a month of realizing I was all on my own, which was very exciting to me and intensely great pressure, which was just an exquisite delight. And so I went, I kind of feel like Michelangelo in the sense that, the first day that Michelangelo, when he was just about 80, went and looked at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, which was then blank, he looked up and he saw this blank canvas and he went, man, it's going to take me 10 years to paint this sucker. And he said, but I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and whatever Pope Julius II does or doesn't like, I'm not going to pay attention to it. I'll be 200 feet up on a scaffold on my back with paint dripping in my eyes all day. And so he had this blank canvas, and that was the thought that I had. I was a big fan of Michelangelo. I read The Agony and the Ecstasy by Irving Stone many times, a number of other things as well. And so that was kind of my viewpoint. I went, what an opportunity. So as it turned out, I show up for the first show, and Arnold and Joe Gibbs walk over to my chair, and Joe Gibbs says, well, we got it all set up for you. Do you know what you're doing? 10 minutes before the show. It was just 6 days before with production meetings and staff and all kinds of stuff. I did the whole thing and sitting on my porch smoking a cigar. So I said, no, I've got this. I said, I'm Michelangelo. I said, you got the building. I said, I'm going to paint the ceiling for you, and I'll make it marketable for you, and I'll make it something that golfers love everywhere they watch from anywhere around the world, and you're going to have to translate into some other languages for me, even though, of course, I speak fluent Mandarin Chinese, which I don't. So Joe, that was the end of that, and so the light comes on, to start the show. It's 8 o'clock, and there's a couple of hundred people in hallways looking on monitors and stuff, and it's me and Arnold and the cameraman, Jason Denny, who operated 3 remote cameras that moved all over the room, robotic. He did it with like a handle thing. It was really insane. He was a great guy. And it's just 3 of us in the room, and so the light went on, and I said, hello, I'm Peter Kessler. Welcome to Golf Talk Live. As soon as I said that, the first time on camera, I went, oh my God, this is going to be so much fun and so easy. And so I had my questions prepared. I had them memorized. I had a photographic memory. I never had to look at the sheet ever in 1,300 shows. And so we do the show with Arnold, and it was as good as any other show I ever did. And Bob Hope called in, and a very ill Dave Marr called in, and the first President Bush called in, and Glenn Campbell called in, and I said, you got to sing the part in Wichita Lineman where it goes, and I need you more than want you. You got to do the whole middle 8 for me. And he went ahead and sang it, and the show went off without a hitch, and it was like I had done it forever and better than anybody who had ever lived, interviewing anybody in any medium. And I knew I could keep doing it every single day if I really put in the time. And I put in amazing amounts of time every week getting ready for the show. I finished the show on a Monday night. Tuesday morning, I had a legal pad out, and by the next Monday morning, it was a few pages thick with 100 questions. And then Monday morning, I would just cull them down to my favorite 20. I'd write them down on a piece of paper, sort of. I'd stick it in my pocket. I had the questions memorized. And then I'd always leave 1 or 2 after a few weeks. I realized where the answer could be one of 4 or 5 different things instead of my knowing for sure what the answer was going to be, because I always knew what the answer was going to be. So that way I could time out the hour showing it, all 20 questions in. And so occasionally I would put myself in a really high stress position just to see how I'd handle the options that the other person had in terms of where they would go with the answer. And it was so much fun. And when I became friends with Sean Connery, he was just like fascinated by the whole thing. We were sitting in Light for Tea in the Bahamas in 2001 after 9/11, and it was the first time that we had met. And I was told, when you come down to play with Sean and me and my other friend, you can't bring up James Bond. You can't say the name. You can't say anything. You can't say Goldfinger. You can't, or he'll just leave. So I went, yeah, right. So the first morning comes, I'm sitting alone in the coffee shop. It's 8 in the morning on a Monday. Sean walks in, comes over, biggest fan I ever had in my whole life. He asked me questions for 30 minutes. He said, okay. He said, on the Arnold interview, when you knew that he might cry when you brought up the passing of Winnie a few months earlier, he said there were so many possibilities. He said, how long did it take you to prepare them? And I said, you mean for the 90 seconds that the thing went on at that point? And he said, yes. I said, well, how long do you think it took me to prepare? And he said, 5 to 7 hours. I said, you're right. It took me 5 to 7 hours to think through the possibilities of what we had these conversations for like 30 minutes. I never even got to say I like your movies. So we finish up. The other guys come in. We go to the first tee. Sean and I are riding together. We got 20 yards off the first tee, and I turned to him. I said, "So, Double O, who was the greatest chick of them all?" He said, "Petey Boy, Ursula Andress." He said, "She was," and he told me story after story after story. So the other guys didn't hear us talking in the cart, so they didn't realize the familiarity. So about the 13th hole, the other cart pulls up right next to ours to our right. And Sean's my passenger, and our host is driving the other cart, and it's 1 foot away from Sean. So we're right near the green. I knew Sean needed a wedge, but I wasn't sure which one. So I said, "Double O, which wedge do you want?" So the host looked at me like, "I can't." And then Sean saw the whole thing, and he looked at him and he said, "Petey and I are peers. You have to call me Sir Sean Connery. You can call me anything he wants." And by the 18th hole, I said, I got to go with 008 for me for the week. He said, "Okay, after your next natural birdie, I'll call you 008 for the rest of that round." And then later that week, he said, "Okay, I'm going to do it for you." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I don't do this for anybody. I haven't done it in 30 years. I said, "What?" And he looked at me and he went, "Bond. James Bond."
Oh, man. So, okay, let me jump in here. I know that you have obviously had lots of experiences with lots of some of the most phenomenal people in golf and in entertainment. Let's take a step back in Peter Kessler's life, though. Let's get in the time machine and go back to when you were a young man. And again, I will interject my story here. Yet another thing we have in common, sir. We both went to very private schools that were prestigious, and we both were fans of borrowing things, as we like to say. And we also were fans of getting into trouble with the administration. I actually was invited to leave, as they say, from my very small Christian conservative college that I went to. You went to Robert Louis Stevenson prep. Am I correct on that?
Oh, yeah. It's a mile from Pebble Beach Golf Links.
That's right. So, okay, let's get in the time machine, Peter, and we're going back to Robert Louis Stevenson prep. Let's go to the night or the daytime where you were called in because you had borrowed a car from the school so that you and your buddy could go see Cream rock out in nearby, was it in San Fran or somewhere nearby Pebble?
Yeah, Fillmore West. Yes, sir.
Fillmore West. Okay, so you are back. You are called into the office. The headmaster is breathing fireballs at you. And pretty much you know this is the end of the road for you on that upward trajectory. Yet still, even with all of that, you were able to put yourself in a position where you went to Cal Western. You went to Cal Western instead of Stanford, where you were probably on your way otherwise. Take us back there and kind of get us all the way to how you found your way into the arts.
Well, Robert Louis Stevenson, when I was 12, on my 12th birthday, the Beatles played on Sullivan on February 9th, 1964. And I had been sick 2 months before in December and home in bed when I Want to Hold Your Hand came on in the New York area and the first time in the United States for the first time. And like everybody else who heard that song, I went completely insane, and I just kept waiting for them to play it, and eventually that's all they did play. And so that was really huge for me. And I had already been deeply in love with golf. From the time I was 12, I was already going to, my mom was dropping me off to watch pro tournaments. I saw Arnold win. I saw Jack win. And then the other big influence in my life was actually performance. I loved theater. When I was a little boy growing up, there was a channel in New York, Channel 9, that had the $1 Million movie every day. And they played the same movie for 6 nights, and then 3 or 4 times on Sunday. And I would watch Yankee Doodle Dandy, the story of George M. Cohan, who invented musical theater in Broadway, essentially. And the only statue on Broadway is to George M. Cohan. And so I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Where was I?
Well, you're back in the office at Robert Louis Stevenson, and they're not pleased that you just borrowed a car from the school.
So by the time I was 12, the 3 things that were most important to me are the 3 things that still are most important to me today: performance and golf and music. And so, my family then moved in 1966 from New Jersey, where we lived, when I was 12 and had watched Ed Sullivan in 64, to California, and I went to military school for a year. And the first day I found out that if you misbehaved, it was like on the beach in San Diego. It was crazy, but the wool pants were so itchy. And they said if you do anything wrong, you got to walk with a backpack on the beach for like hours in soft sand on the weekends. Well, I'm not doing that. So I had a perfect record. I got all straight A's. I played the snare drum in the marching band, and that was the year I started to learn to play acoustic guitar from Marlon Clegg. Marlon would charge you 1 penny to play a song, and I would just watch his hands. So the next year, my parents put me into Robert Louis Stevenson for 10th grade. The year went fine. I fell in love with Cindy Hill. His father was a Methodist minister. And then I married later another woman who was the daughter of a Methodist minister. And, of course, I'm Jewish, so it was perfect. And when we got married, my grandmother, who was Jewish, and she shows up at the church because the Methodist minister, my wife's father, is going to do the ceremony. And we said, no, we took everything about Jesus off the wall. Those people aren't Jesus. They're very nice Jewish people from another era. And she said, oh, okay. So so I had a great first year. I loved everything about it. My dorm room was 50 yards away from the First Tee at Spyglass, which had just opened. And in those days, you could just walk to the First Tee at Spyglass, First Tee at Pebble, not Cypress, and just put the ball on a peg and just play. You didn't check in. You didn't do anything. There was nobody there. You want to go play 6 holes at Spyglass, no problem whatsoever. So great first year. We go back for the second year, and the smartest guy in the school is my friend Myron Mellon from Cleveland, who was the only student there on a scholarship, and he was really a genius. The things that he wrote that he thought at 16 years old were just stunning. And so one night we decided we would steal a car from the school, and that we would drive up to San Francisco and go see the Cream concert, and then we'd bring the car back and get into bed, and nobody would know about it. So we hired a freshman to go into the infirmary because the car, the station wagon we wanted was right outside the infirmary, and we didn't want anybody to see it pull away. So we hired this kid to go in and fall on the ground so the nurse would have to bend down, and then we pulled out of the lot with the lights off. We drove up to San Francisco. We saw the show. It was an incredible evening, and we're driving back, and Myron's driving, and I'm kind of half asleep, and we get pulled over, and they find out we're not supposed to have the car. And so we got taken to the police station in San Jose, and they called Dionne Warwick is not there to save our ass. And so the guy comes up to San Jose to get us and drove us back and took us to Mr. Rickliff's office that morning. And he said, it's, Grand Theft Auto. He said, we don't really have any choice. Just go ahead and call your mom and tell her you'll be home on the next flight. And that's exactly what happened. And then, unfortunately for me, I got to L.A. and I bounced around different high schools, and we're still not sure if I ever finished. I mean, I did, but it was like, are we sure? And then, but I did a lot of acting at RLS. I played Noah in The Rainmaker, and the girl who played the girl became my girlfriend briefly. And we did a few other plays there. We did LaRonde, which was a 1890 sexual comedy manners where people rotate with different partners and stuff, and that was fun. So I'd always enjoyed the acting. I had done it in high school, done it in grade school. So I get kicked out of RLS. I'm in LA. I don't know what I'm doing. I finish. I go down to Cal Western in San Diego, and then I started acting in theater. They did a lot of plays down there. It was fantastic. I played a gay guy in Noon by Terrence McNally, which was really fun, with really my best buddy at the time, Michael Brainerd, and we would go down to the cliffs and practice this 10-minute scene of seduction. It was really, really fun. And the thing was, you just pretend it's a girl, and it's not like a big deal. You don't have to do anything different. You pretend it's a woman. It's not a woman. You pretend it's a woman. So that was great fun. And so really, I kept my hand in acting, but then then my dad died when I was 20, and there was another fellow who became close to me and my family, and he said, how would you like to work? And then I went to law school for a little bit. I went to business school for a little bit. That didn't work out. And he said, how would you like to work for the Rothschild family in London? I said, like the famous Rothschild family from Europe with the 5 arrows and everything? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I don't know anything. He said, well, come over. If you could come over, you can interview. You might like living in London. You'll learn some things. Okay. So we fly over to London, and on the flight over, my friend Harold says to me, I think he'll ask you this. I think he'll ask you that. So we get there, and now we're meeting with who is now Lord Rothschild, the most famous and powerful banker in the world, then M. Rothschild and Sons. And at that time, he was just about as powerful and ran the branch on St. Swithin's Lane in London, where I worked, and lived finally he looks at me and he goes, "What do you think of holography?" And I had never heard the word before, and so I was just ready to basically say so. And for the only time in the interview, my friend Harold speaks up and he goes, "Oh yeah, holography." He said, "That's that new technology that lets cameras see around corners." We were trying to figure out, what the practical uses might be. And Jacob said, "Yes, I've had a couple of ideas." So, so I got a, complete pass. And then I get the job and I move over to London and they said, buy us producing oil and gas properties in the United States. Here's $25 million. I said, oils for salad dressings. What are you talking about? So I figured it out. I come back to the United States. I buy us 1% interest in 500 producing oil and gas wells all over the country. Close the deal on a Friday in '78 for $25 million. One business day later on the Monday came the first Iranian embargo crisis, and the price of oil reserves doubled over the weekend. So the investment I had made on Friday for 25 was now worth $50 million on Monday, and I negotiated myself, shrewd negotiator that I am, a raise from $15,000 to $22,000. And eventually I moved back and I bounced around Wall Street, and then you know the bit about getting to the Golf Channel.
Right. Well, that's amazing. I didn't even realize that you had all of that background with the Rothschild family, but that is phenomenal information. Okay, we'll jump forward a little bit now. Now you're working at Golf Channel. You've already established yourself as the biggest presence on the channel. Everybody pretty much agrees that you are the heart and soul of the Golf Channel industry as far as, what they recognize as, the personality. It's you and Palmer pretty much. Obviously you ruffled some feathers, and I know a thing or two about ruffling feathers too. And obviously, Peter, you're a straight shooter, but also, like I think I am myself, I'm willing to accept when I've shot too far across the bow. I would say, from what I've read, you were someone that was willing to take even the biggest elephants in the room to task on air. And that obviously created tension for you at Golf Channel. I guess start us off on that. I know there are different angles to this. I know you and Gibbs obviously weren't the coziest of friends. I know that you obviously were critical of Arnold and some business dealings that he made with Callaway. Take us through this part of the process where you kind of eventually were let go from Golf Channel for what I would call mysterious pretenses.
I like that one. Well, Arnold was really like my dad. I mean, my dad died when I was 20, and I didn't really even know him that well at that point. And so when Arnold and I first got together, and he didn't have any sons, and he was 65 and I was 42, we got along extraordinarily well, and very quickly he realized that I was like the first person ever that would say stuff to him that you would say like to a normal person. I mean, the first day that we were together and we had now played golf and the thing with the foot on the range and all that stuff, so now we're big buddies, and we're sitting in his workshop talking about girls. And he starts wrapping and unwrapping this leather grip on his clubs to no effect. Wrap it, unwrap it, wrap it, unwrap it. And he does it on the golf course. I said, you have to stop doing that. And he said, what? I said, stop wrapping and unwrapping the club. I said, it's just compulsive behavior. I said, it's annoying. He said, what? I said, you're annoying me. He said, I'm annoying you? I said, yes. If we're going to hang out together and put this Golf Channel thing going, I said, I can't be worried every time we get together that you're going to be a pain in the ass. And he said, nobody's ever called me that before. I said, well, good, I won't either if you're not going to be one. So he loved that. If we saw a really pretty woman, he would say, oh, I'm going to go talk to her. I said, first of all, I'm younger. Second of all, I'm handsomer. Third of all, I'm famous now. Oh, you have hearing aids. And fifth of all, you lost 3 U.S. Open playoffs, and I never lost. So you got no shot. And he would laugh, and nobody, and people would look at the two of us like, what? So we had a very good relationship. And before his wife, when he died, she sat the two of us down at Bay Hill on a couch in one of the little rooms, and she said, look, I'm going to be gone soon. And she said, Arnold, she said, Peter's the only one who doesn't want anything from you. He's never asked you for anything, never came to you, asked you for more money at the golf channel. He never asked you, wanted anything from you except your friendship and and it's been true both ways. And she said, when you get ready to make a stupid decision, I'm not going to be here. She said, and if I were you, I would call Peter, because he'll give you the straight scoop. He won't do what's good for him. He'll do what's good for you. And she looked at me and she said, right? I said, definitely, Winnie. And then she scolded Arnold, and she said, and you take care of him, and you protect him. And she said, I know all those people are after him at the Golf Channel. You know exactly what he's doing, and that it's all good and fair and right. It's not his fault. He does his job better than other folks. Let them be jealous. It's not your problem, Arnold. He said, okay. So, we were really close. So then he goes and endorses this non-conforming club, which technically was non-conforming by 1 gazillionth of 1%. I mean, it was a real technological non-event.
So take us through that. I'm interested in this club specifically. Take us through the club and what was non-conforming about it.
Well, at that time, and at this time, there was a USGA rule that basically said when your ball gets compressed against your driver face, it's only allowed to trampoline this much. And it was expressed as a number. And so when I'll pause a second. So when in October of 2000, Callaway introduced the ERC2. Its trampoline effect very slightly exceeded the rules by as little as you could exceed it, but still exceed it. But unfortunately, that made it onto the non-conforming list. At some point, the line is drawn, and this one was just over the line. So it was clearly a matter of principle as far as I was concerned. And it might not have bothered me if it had been anybody else. Well, Gary or Jack would have done it, but they wouldn't have done it. That would have certainly bothered me. But I said to Arnold, I went over to his office right after this all happened in October of 2000. I said, look, you can't do this. You have to get out of this deal. And at that point, all of his henchmen were there. Everybody who wanted him to be in the deal. And so I got shooed away. And so then a couple of months goes by, and now it's January, and it's time for our annual Golf Channel interview, which we did every January. So I called him on Saturday, and I said, I'm going to meet you for breakfast on Monday. And he said, great. I met him for breakfast. He always sat at the table right in the front, facing the door so people couldn't miss him. I said, seriously? I said, you still need this? I said, we can't go. I said, everybody has to get to see you, and you get somebody else to tell you how great you are. I said, how much do you need of this affirmation and adulation? He would laugh and get ready to pretend to slap me with the back of his right hand. And so we had breakfast. I said, look, dude, I said, we're going to get out of this. I said, this is terrible. I said, so tonight, I'm going to say to you, so Arnold, this morning at breakfast, you said to me, I'm not encouraging people to break the rules. I'm really just saying, if there's any way to get people involved in the game, I'm up for it, no matter what it takes. And I said, now, when I say that, all you say back is yes, that is how I feel. If you do that, this is over. It's over for you. It's over for me. It's over for everybody. We can move on to something else. I said, don't you drink tonight. Do not come to the office stoned tonight. Do not come drunk. And so when I looked over in the wings just before the show started and he was going to walk over, I saw him there in the dark, and he was weaving, and it was a 5-drink weave all the way. And he was very, very, heavy vodka drinker. He didn't want water to bruise it. Don't put ice, don't put water, you'll bruise the vodka. Oh, shut up. So he sits down in the chair, and I say, you okay? And he goes, yeah. I said, you remember what we said this morning? He said, yes, you lead and I'll follow. So I did exactly what I said I was going to do. And instead of him saying, yes, that's how I feel, and having it be completely over, and I thought of the whole answer for him. He didn't have to do anything. And instead he said, my friends are calling and writing and calling me a cheater, and if you call me a cheater, I'm going to punch you in the nose. That was the mistake I made, was not recognizing at the moment how loaded he was, and that under all circumstances it would be inappropriate to continue the conversation, no matter what it was, if it was going to be delicate. I didn't have that thought. The thought that I did have was, okay, this is not good, and this is great I'm going to try a couple of more questions to try to give him an out, to say it another way and let him get out. But he wouldn't take the out. And so, Joe Gibbs, for some reason, he had never been in the entertainment business, and he had an extraordinarily large ego, and he was, actually and physically in love with Arnold, definitely. And he really resented the relationship. And it got to the point where if Joe Gibbs came over to Bay Hill, where he was a member, and he saw Arnold and I having lunch, he would get steamed up. What are you doing here? And Arnold would say, we're going to play golf. So then we started sneaking around like he was a woman, and we would have lunch in his office, and some woman would call me at 11 and say, what do you want? And I'd tell her, and sandwich would be waiting in Arnold's office, and we avoided Joe Gibbs. And when, it'd be 20 years ago, very shortly, that the Golf World cover story on me came out, and it was like my mom wrote it on the day she loved me most, and it wasn't even balanced, just basically said, this is the most amazing thing. So, so Joe was unhappy because he thought it should have been him on the cover of the magazine. I said, oh, for goodness sake. I said, if there's going to be a James Bond movie, who do you want it to be starring and whose picture? Do you want Sean Connery, or do you want the guy who produced the show who's a fat old guy? I said, it has nothing to do with you. I said, I'm your figurehead. I'm your face. You want them to write about me. And he disagreed. And there was a time I tried to get a show for Scott Van Pelt, and he didn't like Scott, and tried to get a show for Rich Lerner, spread it around a little bit, and he didn't like Rich for religious reasons, which was just a completely insane conversation. And so, I really never really saw him or anybody at the Golf Channel, because my day was I would sit at home on my porch, and I would work on the show until I was ready, and I would call my producer in the office and say, get this piece of tape, make this graphic, get this ready, boop-a-doop. And then I'd go in at 6:30 at night, and I'd get made up, and I'd go sit in my chair. I didn't see people in the hall. I wasn't familiar with gossip. I didn't go out with the girls. I hardly knew any of them. I mean, I could have if I'd wanted to. I was the star of the network, which is why I never understood the Matt Lauer thing. How can you be a star of a network and be a handsome man and not have every woman in the place want to sleep with you? For goodness gracious, Scott Van Pelt wasn't exactly Cary Grant. He looked more like Mr. Clean. The girl in the place would have been happy to go out with Scott Van Pelt, and most of them would have been really happy to spend some time with me, but I didn't pay attention to that. I didn't know about gossip. I didn't know about the drug things that were going on. I knew nothing about anything. Literally, I was just painting my ceiling. I didn't have time for other stuff. Sometimes they'd call me in and say, you did this and you did this, and I had no idea what they're talking about. And they'd have a stack of folders like it was my permanent record. I wasn't even paying attention. I was thinking, so in the second segment with Snead tonight, is that too early if I get into why he drew the ball? I wasn't even paying attention to any of that stuff. So Gibbs didn't like me. Every other person on air was jealous of me. I understood it. I didn't do anything interpersonally to cause any aggravation. I didn't act like a big shot. Never got in arguments with anybody. Didn't have to tell anybody how great I was. Pretty clear from every indication that everybody had in any possible way in the universe. So I was pretty comfortable, but I knew people didn't like it, and I knew there was a big dartboard on my back, but I just didn't pay attention. But I knew my time was going to be finite. I knew the run would only last so long. I knew I didn't have any friends. And so I knew that they would use something to jettison me, so they used you were rude to Arnold to get rid of me. But Arnold knew that I was just doing what I was supposed to do, and we were still friends after that, and we still played golf after that, and maybe we talked about it twice, and eventually he said, boy, did I screw that up. If when he had been alive, I never would have done it. I said, I told you that, you stupid. And I said, I want an extra shot today. And we played a lot of golf, and he was great to play golf with. I was this freaking pigeon, let me tell you.
So
after the first round, where I couldn't play, and I played really good in his company, so he starts fighting me over to be his partner in the big game at Bay Hill, like, regularly. And I was playing to, like, about a 3 or a 4. My handicaps kept saying 6, and I couldn't figure it out. So one day I went into a pro shop, and I said, can you have a thing where I can see my scores? They were putting in scores for me from Arnold's office. They were putting in 78s and 81s and keeping my handicap at 6. I didn't realize I was Arnold's hustler. Well, we went all over the place and played guys for money. I didn't participate. Sometimes he gave me some of it. And when he didn't want to, I said, let's count count up who contributed more holes today, Arnold. And he said, okay, never mind, here's $500. So, we were great partners, and he just wanted to step on everybody's neck. We played these three guys one day, the two of us, beat them 7-5, 3-1 on the front. That's almost as many ways as you can win. We come to the last hole on the back, we're 6-4-2, so there's one more possible bet to win. And I, for some reason, had hit it longer than him, which I never really did. Even when he was 67, 68, 60, he really could hit it. Really hit it. When he did win 8 major championships, and he did win 63 times on tour. And so he hits his second shot up by the green on 18th hole at Bay Hill, which everybody's familiar with. And on Sunday at Bay Hill, if everybody remembers, the pin's always on the right over the water. And I had driven perfectly down the right side, so I had an unobstructed, very clear angle right at the flag. So Arnold said, what are you going to hit? Like you always did. And I would never listen to him because every time I did, I'd be long by 15 yards. So he said, what are you going to hit? And I said, 7. He said, nope, hit the 6. He said, because it plays a little longer than you think. I said, okay, and I pretended to switch clubs. So I went ahead and hit the 7, and I flush jobbed it, went into the water. Arnold jumped out of the cart, ran around to the back, looked in my bag, looked in my hand. He was steaming that I hit the 7-iron. Then he didn't want to split the money with me. We won every possible way you could win. And he said, that club selection on 18, Peter, he said, you know I won 7 majors, right? And I said, actually, it's 8, Arnold, because your U.S. amateur counts too, okay? If you win a pro major after 1960, your amateurs count, and you did, so they did, and so you have 8. So is there anything else I can help you with?
So, okay, I want to flash a little bit more forward. Now you're not at Golf Channel anymore, but I got 2 different questions for you, golf related, and we'll start with the perfect club. Now, you are the inventor of the perfect club. And to those that remember all those infomercials back in the day, that was Peter's baby. And you and your son, I believe, were the 2 that went about marketing the perfect club. So take us through that invention and how that kind of put you back at least up in the chips financially.
Okay. I never say the name of that club any longer because I ended up having a dust-up with the people, and I don't want to do anything to help them. And they've changed it from my original configuration, which is unfortunate. So I just say, look, I was the co-inventor of the hybrid. A man sent me a short golf club. It was kind of funny looking. The shaft was bent in places, very curious looking. And he said, go ahead and hit some shots with this. So I happened to be going up to Jacksonville a few hours from my home in Orlando, playing a really great Donald Ross course, Timuquana. So I took this club and I played it for every full shot, even tee shots, just to get a feel and get accustomed to it. So by the end of the round, I went, man, if I could make a couple of changes to this, you could definitely use this instead of a 4-iron or a 3-iron. So I took it back to Orlando, and I sent it to a really good friend of mine, the one who introduced me to Sean Connery. And I said, I'm sending you a club. Forget what it looks like. Just go ahead and hit it. But play it in the middle of your stance. It kind of looks like a fairway would, but you really got to play it like an 8-iron. So he said, okay. And he was up in Canada, and he moved some snow away at a golf course and hit a few shots, and he called it, says, unbelievable. So I said, what do you think about the cosmetics? And he said, we got to fix them. I said, right. So let's go normal shaft. Let's go classy ferrule. Let's go lambkin grip. And let's just redesign the sole plate a little bit so it just looks, traditional. And I said, but everything else about it is great. And I said, basically what this is, it's a 3-iron shaft. It's 39 and a half inches. And I said, it's really got a 7-wood head on it. So it's like a 3-iron shaft with a 21-degree head. I said, but because it's shorter, it's a lot easier to hit than long iron. So he said, what do you think it'll cost to get this up and running? And I figured it out with somebody because that wasn't the business I was in. And we figured it was just a little less than $2 million to do everything. And my friend found the money in 5 minutes. And so I wrote the infomercial and the commercials and did everything that anybody had ever seen. It was all my work. And then we started to run the infomercial on the Golf Channel, but we ran it way too often. I didn't know the business. I didn't know that side of the business. I didn't realize I could have just run it a couple of times a week and not redirected all the cash flow back into running the show. But anyway, after a short period of time, Titleist and Callaway and everybody realized what I had done, and there was no way to you can't patent the idea of a shorter club. So they made their own, and then they asked me to sort of run the business. I didn't really know anything about it, and I successfully introduced what's now the most purchased club in golf is the hybrid. But I didn't make any money from it, really, and the business did not ultimately do well. It did well for a few years, but it didn't provide, put away money. And so it was a fascinating experience, and I'm delighted to have introduced it, and I'm quite proud of it. And, as Leonardo would say, okay, so that's number 30. What's number 31?
That's right. And I was going to say it's probably my favorite club in my bag, the one I trust the most, especially when I'm eating crap with all the other ones. So your paintbrush is my favorite one that I use in my easel. So, okay, we'll move on from that. I know that your son, Christopher, also was the first one that put Twitter in your hands when you were going through your disenchantment period. And as a bona fide Twitter troll champion myself, you have been quite the rabble-rouser on Twitter, my friend. I want to go there because I feel like this is what I live for, are these kind of questions, especially from people like you. Again, you're an elephant in the room hunter, Peter, and you always have been, and you still are. I see how you handle yourself on Twitter, and I'm not criticizing you in any way by saying this. I love it. I'm fascinated by it. You take on all of these Golf Channel stuff shirts that are on now, and you clown them. And all that it does is show how thin-skinned these people are, that they can't even take legitimate criticism from somebody who is far more knowledgeable than they and their forebear for their job. And you also are willing to criticize professional golfers. And, our listeners know this, but if you're not an, super golf fan, these are people that if you criticize them at all, they act like you're dead to them. And yet you were willing to take on every one of these folks, no matter how big and how powerful they are. Now, obviously, that may have limited your options in that industry, but I think it's amazing Twitter content. So tell me how you got into Twitter, how you got into becoming, in your own words, the heel that came in and was willing to battle these guys, and then also how you got into your own self-produced content that you're now putting out through Twitter that's kind of your new focus.
Yeah, I think I really made a mistake. When I first got on Twitter, I noticed there was a lot of carping and stuff going on. I was just kind of watching what was going on. And so, as you would well understand, given your background, I decided to kind of create this character who jumped on everybody, but it came out wrong. And it made me look like a jerk. And I think I said a number of things that I shouldn't have said, where I did cross a line. And finally I came to realize that. And I took a step back and I went, this is not really what people want from you. What people want from you is what you've given them all this time. And if you can think of some new things that can add on to, your history as golf media's renaissance man, then that's really what you ought to do. So I decided to stop doing that largely, probably middle of August. And I continued to tone it down, and I've continued to tone it down. And so now I just try to, in terms of discussing people, I try to be, not to be a jerk about it, but to remember what my status is and to remember what I've accomplished and that I need to be more above the fray. So that was actually a regrettable period. I don't mind the business of who I took on. That's never been a problem for me. But I think there's a good way to do it and a not so good way, and it took me a while to learn the good way. And then, of course, I realized that, just do what you're good at, man. So let your work speak for yourself. So starting in January of this year, after thinking about it for a couple of months, I started going through my content, and I went, I'm going to share this with everybody. And so I, went onto my website with a friend, and we got 23 shows up there now and 7 little podcasts I did a year ago, just me telling stories, Paul Harvey kind of thing. And now I'm just banging out the content. I'm trying to be true to who I am artistically, and I'm not going to do any more characters on Twitter. Things that work in person don't always work when you write them. And it took me a while to realize people don't know where I'm kidding. People don't know where I'm being sarcastic. Yes, I'm a good writer, but you ain't Ernest Hemingway. So you need to go closer to your sweet spot, but you need to do new and different things. So I decided I would do on-camera commentary and criticisms. I decided I would write songs. I decided I would use tunes I already knew and write new words to them. I just let whatever was coming through happen, and I would run up into my study, and I learned how to turn on a camera and shoot it myself and go edit it myself. All I got to do is clip off the end in the beginning. It's not like you're just doing it in a take or two. And then, and then I learned how to post it and all of that stuff. The mechanical stuff is amazingly aggravating for me, but that's where I am with it now. I'm going to do the kind of things and continue to do the kind of things that people want me to do, and I'm not going to experiment on paper anymore with characterizations that can be misconstrued or that are just poorly put and are being construed correctly because they weren't appropriate. So I regret a number of those instances, but yet I don't believe I ever said anything that in essence I would take back. I just think there's a nicer way to say some of the things that I did, and so I'm striving very hard to do that now and to be the person that I really am, and that realizing that characters, which I created on the Golf Channel and doing acting and all sorts of stuff, those don't work if it's Twitter. It doesn't work. You don't know the audience well enough. You don't know them personally. They don't know when you're kidding. So just be straightforward on that stuff. But at the same time, I'm trying to come up with all kinds of different ideas and do things that nobody else is going to do. And it's funny, Tucker, because nobody really, as a group, golfers are largely uninterested in golf history. I'm putting up bite-sized pieces that for first graders would be palatable, and yet I can definitely tell who is and isn't paying attention. I've got a really good nucleus of hardcore golfers, but golfers who would follow, say, the no-laying up guys aren't going to be interested in my stuff. It's so completely different. And I keep thinking, well, if I spoon-feed them history while you guys are entertaining them in the way that they entertain their people, then I might be able to attract some of those folks to enjoying history. But it's a real tough slog. But, the audience for that is really 50 and over. I'm trying to keep them short. I'm trying to keep them fun. I'm trying to write fun songs. I'm trying to engage a more diverse demographic crowd and a more diverse age crowd, without trying to pretend like I'm 21 anymore. So it's an interesting dilemma, and it's one that I enjoy from a creative aspect, but certainly the focus is on just banging out great content. I just came back from seeing my mom for 5 days in New York, and I told folks last week I'd start again May 1st and at 12:01. I punched in my first, a PGA warm-up show, a 3-part series I did on Walter Hagen, and every day I'm going to keep putting up interviews with people who won the PGA and with film and with chat and whatever it takes, and just do what it is I do. And if I can think of some interesting things to say on camera, I'll do that too. But I'm not going to force that. I did a lot of on cameras. Golf doesn't have a lot of issues, so there's not a lot to kind of talk about. So, and you're not going to sit there and do history, and you've only got 2 minutes if it's Twitter. So it's an interesting format in terms of its limitations, and it's an interesting format in terms of its mandate on how to behave, both of which I've now figured out. TV, I figured out the first 10 seconds. Twitter took me like a year.
Well, I can attest, man. And, everybody would assume because I turned 21 in 2000 that I would be, easily able to navigate the internet. But I spent years and years playing the heel and playing the superhero and going back and forth like a pendulum with that. And I completely empathize and understand where you're coming from, where you keep thinking people are savvy enough to read between your lines and they can't. And also seeing that eventually you either have people that you care about take things that you say cavalierly personal, or vice versa, and watching friendships get strained and, et cetera, because of that. I also know what you mean about content being king and letting that speak louder than any of the editorializing or whatnot. So I agree with you. I think I've come to that same place myself. So I guess we'll get down to the nitty grits here. I've got a couple questions for you, and then I think we pretty much wrapped this, but I got to go there anyway. I asked Rick Riley this when I interviewed him last week. Favorite politicians that you've played with, and let's do top three favorite politicians you played with, and then as a follow-up we'll say top 3 favorite golfers you played with besides Arnold, because we've already got that. Top 3 favorite golfers, top 3 favorite politicians.
Well, politicians, see, I played with Trump before he was one, about 21 or 2 years ago.
Did he cheat like Rick said he cheats?
Not then. He was a completely different certainly he's not functioning on the same level as he did then, and he's still young enough that he could be, and so that troubles me from one point of view. But when I played with him, he was nice, he was engaging, he was fun to play with. He shot 80-ish. We played in New York at one of his courses. I was on the Golf Channel. I mean, it was actually a very pleasant day, and there was no cheating, and he didn't need to cheat. I mean, he was sitting and play. And cheating in golf is hard to do. I mean, if you're in play, how are you going to cheat? I said to a friend of mine, my oldest friend the other day at 52 years, I said, I can't think of a circumstance in any round that we played in the last year where I could have been in a position to cheat. I said I couldn't even, think of where could you be and what could you do to try to... I just couldn't even, fathom it up as a concept. And so, I mean, I know that it's happened, and I've been witness to a few things, but, he certainly didn't do it that day, and he definitely kept the ball and played well enough to shoot 80, so there's no cheating going on, and I didn't see him flicking coins. He wasn't picking up 3.5 4-footers, or it was pretty normal. So it's not a good story. The story is how much he's changed since then, and how different the perception is.
Sure. You're not the only one who's said that I've researched, that said that they really enjoyed playing with him, and that he's not only fun but a great golfer, probably one of our best golfing presidents. So I believe you. Any other presidents or big political figures?
Well, I didn't play with, but spent time with. I spent almost a full day with George Bush 41 and Arnold at the Golf Channel, and we watched shows together and just hung out. And we showed him a bit of a show with me and Arnold. And he looked at me and he said, "I'll do that with you." And Arnold said to him, "You haven't won anything. You're not on." So that was fantastic. I played golf with Dan Quayle in a celebrity tournament, who told me something, and he was a really good player. He definitely shot around par, and he said to me, this was 20 years ago too, I'll bet the last time we played, even though we're friendly and I'm in touch with him, but he said to me, the most important thing is to have a club in your hand 45 minutes a day. He said, I don't care if you're not hitting balls, I don't care if you are hitting balls, sitting in front of the grip it, ungrip it. He said, always got 45 minutes a day, which I thought was particularly interesting advice. But so from a political viewpoint, I don't think I'm forgetting anybody, but Bill Clinton was a huge fan of mine. A friend of his who was a teacher came on my teaching show at the Golf Channel and said, oh my God, he tapes your shows at the White House on Monday night when he's not there. He said, it's completely insane. And I said, oh, this is fantastic. And so finally I got a chance to meet him, and if I had hung in longer at the Golf Channel, he would have come and done a show with me for sure. And we met a couple of times and had a couple of really good conversations. I didn't have to introduce myself. He knew exactly who I was, said my name, and so that was a very pleasant experience. And quite frankly, the last time I saw Bill Clinton was here in Orlando at a golf course, and it was really amazing how people respond to him. He is so charismatic and so charming in person. I said to him, Bill, and he didn't say, just call me Mr. President. I said, Bill, the guys are as interested in you as the women are. And he said, yeah. He said, it's true. He says, it's the craziest thing. He said, I'm of course not. I said, yeah, I get it. He said, women and men are equally interested in me. And so we talked about charm, and we talked about charisma. We were actually standing alone by a sink in a men's room, and nobody else was there, and the security guys were outside. We talked for 10 or 15 minutes, and it was an extraordinarily wonderful experience. And he explained to me how he had VHS tapes in a special closet of all my shows organized by date, and if he was out of town, how they had to tape them on 2 different recorders in case one of them screwed up. And so that was really fun. And then in terms of, I played golf with so many people. I mean, I'd have to put Connery right near at the top of the list. And he was the greatest 18 in 01 and 02. You could get within the 50 yards of the green in regulation, but he was a great pitcher of the golf ball. So from 35 to 50 yards, he was within 15 feet frequently. So he wasn't going to 3-putt. Occasionally he'd make one for a par net birdie, and I don't think he was over 90. I mean, he's shooting 88, 89, and at an 18 you're supposed to shoot 92 or 3. And so he helped on the team net and gross and we won the tournament both years in a row, net and gross. I just posted a picture of it actually on my Instagram account.
I did see that. That's why I thought of him when I was asking you about entertainers. I got to bring up Tiger. Have you ever had any experiences? I know you've interviewed him. Have you ever had any golfing experiences with Tiger?
Yes, we've never actually played a normal round, but the experiences I've had with him far exceed the opportunity to just play together, which is, first of all, we were very friendly, and I was very direct with him as I was with Arnold, and and he knew me before I knew him, because I was on the Golf Channel for 2 years before the world knew who he was towards the end of '96, and we did our first interview in '96 when he was only 20 years old. So he totally trusted me, and he would trust me to do an interview again in a heartbeat, I'm sure. But I've spent an amazing number of hours with him on practice ranges and major championships, sitting right next to him in Budge. One time he was filming a commercial at a course nearby, and I just happened to be there, and I see the set, and I drive over, and it's Tiger. So he waves me over, and I saw the director had long hair, so I knew he was going to take 10 years between setups because he was a big shot. So Tiger and I chipped, and then after 5 minutes, he gave me 2 feet extra per chip. I could move it closer to the hole to see who won. It was a joke. The guy holed like a third of them. Like 20-footers, 25-footers. And the guy, whoever won the hole, got to pick the next hole. And I was picking the ones that were the hardest possible shots, because I thought I could get it within 5 feet, and he'd have to hit a ridiculous shot to get it inside 5 feet. He did it to a foot, and be mad that it didn't go in. So we did a lot of that, and then at the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble on the Wednesday night, before the thing started the next day, it was me, Butch, Stevie Williams, Tiger, and the late Sandy Tatum, who was one of great golf's historical figures and statesmen and mover and shaker, one of the most important figures of the last 100 years. And so just the 5 or 6 of us walking around. It was 6 o'clock. Everybody was gone. We played the back 9. Tiger played the back 9, shoots 30.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard many stories of how phenomenal he was, not just in these tournaments, but just to witness when he was, off camera.
On 18, he had 120 yards into 18 in that final 9, and hold the pitch for a 3 to shoot 30. So he had 2 eagles and 2 birdies, never scared bogey. And so we go over to the putting green on Saturday night. He's got a 10-shot lead. So he said to me, I don't like where my eyes are in relation to the golf ball when I'm putting. And I said, well, this is problematic. I said, first of all, your lead's very narrow. 10 shots is nothing. I said, you're not that good. And I said, the thing is, I don't really think I can fix you by tomorrow morning. I said, if they'll let me fill in and I can get my 10 shots, I said, I can win this golf. So we had, so we've had a lot of really good interpersonal moments, and it was really because, he allowed that to happen, and Butch and I were very friendly, and what we did do was more important than playing while he was playing and having him standing about my swing. Ernie Els shot 60 against me at Lake Nona, gave me 10 shots. We lost 5 million ways, and and I played with Gene Sarazen when he was 70 in 1972, and I was 20, completely by accident. And Reggie Jackson was our third, completely by accident. And on the third hole, Reggie Jackson and I figured out we're both dating the girl who ran the gift shop. Really, really upset about it. And I thought it was great, because I thought we could all go out to dinner together. I said, we can talk hitting and pitchers. And he said, I'm going out with you. And of course we did. But I've been extremely lucky. I played with Mike Gamble. I played with Dean Martin. I played 100 rounds with Tommy Bolt. It's funny, when Tommy was 91, he won the 1958 U.S. Open, 15 times on tour, an incredible ball striker. He actually had a better career as a senior than a regular tour player. And when Tommy was 91, and he still never missed a shot, one day at 6,450 yards with a 1.5 club wind at 6,450 in Florida, Tommy shoots a 69. He hit 16 greens, and on the 17th hole, he pitched in for eagle from 50 yards, an impossible shot, which we discussed beforehand because I couldn't figure out how he might play it. And then on the one green he missed, it was 2 feet short of the green, but the pin was only 15 feet in front of him uphill, and he changed clubs 16 times, kept telling me what a hard shot it was. It was the most basic chip shot in the history of the game. And then, of course, he holds the chip shot for a birdie, and he wipes his forehead with the back of his right hand. He said, tough shot, boy. I never had one quite like that. Only 10,000 times before.
So, okay, I got to ask you one more question, and it's got to be the hard ball to finish. And I know you've already said that you're not really in the mood to be pouring salt on fields these days. But I got to ask it. Who is the one golfer you'd never want to play golf with again? I don't care if they're a pro or a celebrity or a politician or whoever. Who is the one golfer Peter Kessler will never share 18 holes with again?
You know, nobody. Wait a minute. Holy moly, I almost forgot. In 2006, I played for the fifth or sixth time in the Dunhill Links, which is just like the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. It's 3 courses, and then on Saturday night, out of the 168 two-man teams, 20 get to play the final round with the low 55 professionals and ties on Sunday at the old course. So I was really, if you make the 20, it's incredible. And second year I played in, and I played with Thomas LeVay, and I played as a 6. I worked on my game all summer, and I went over and shot 75 at the old course, 75 at Kings Barnes, 79 at Carnoustie, which was actually the best round of the 3, and then 75 again on the Sunday at the old course. LeVay missed the cut individually. We made the cut as a team, and we were the only team to make the cut whose pro didn't make the cut. And I made him $25,000. And I said, "Where's my cash?" And he said, "Oh, when did you turn pro?" So that was fabulous. But years later, I played in it again. I played with Francisco Luna, I think it was, from Spain. And we played with Mark Rowe, who used to play on the European Tour and retire. That was his last tournament in 2006. I never saw anybody cheat like this, ever. We're playing the old course the first day. There were a few times I thought he had mismarked his ball, and then I thought, no, that can't be right. We get to 17, one of the most famous holes in golf. You drive it over the corner of the hotel. You try to hit a cut so you can keep it in the fairway. Most people miss left because that's a safe place to be, but it's a terrible second shot and hard to make par. So I hit short left, hit my second shot up short right of the green. Rose about 40 yards ahead of me, and I quietly just keep walking behind him as to not disturb him. And he gets to his ball in the rough. Now, the ground at the old course is as hard as cement. There's never been a plug lie in the history of the old course, literally. And the course has never even been wet. It drains in 2 seconds, and the ground is so firm that it's the only course I ever played where actually the bottom of my feet hurt after. And I said, "What's the deal?" And they said, "That's how hard the ground is." So Mark Rose in the rough, and he just picks his ball up.
Oh, man. He just decided that he was going to give himself a nice, better lie than that.
That's much worse than that. So he picks up the ball, and he screams out, "Francesco." Francesco's now 40 yards short right of the green. He's already knocked his second shot on. He's 110 yards away from us. And Rowe holds his hand up and waves his hand with the ball, and Francesco throws his arms out to the side as if to say, "Whatever you have to do, just do." So Rowe drops the ball. So, of course, he's already cheated because the ground is hard as rock. And he drops the ball. Then he bends down again, and he picks up the ball. And he gives himself a perfect lie. And he knocks the ball on the green. And then he turns around, and he sees I'm 5 feet away from him. And he knows I've seen the whole thing. And he completely discombobulated. We get to the green. I've got a 10-footer for 4. And it's my turn to putt. He goes, "You going to putt? You going to hit this putt? What are you going to do, Peter? What's going on here? You're going to delay the game?" He just got a little nutty. So I actually knocked in the putt. We finished the 18th hole. We go into the scoring trailer. Every round I've ever played in a tournament with a pro, I always check the card myself, just to be sure. So in this case, Francesco signed the card, handed it to me, said, "It's right. Go ahead and sign it." And I did. And normally the amateur partner wouldn't check it, but I used to check it. So then it starts to rain right after that. And so we all have to stay inside the trailer. And all of a sudden the woman scorer says, "Wait a minute, nobody moved." Which said, "What's going on?" She said, "There's a problem with this scorecard. If we don't change it before you leave the trailer, you and Peter are disqualified, Francesco." So we go over and look at the card. Rowe has taken 2 of the individual scores on different holes and transposed them. You can see the erasure marks, you can see the new numbers. So there's 2 wrong scores, and therefore since one of them was lower and one of them was higher, that would be a disqualification for signing the card. But because we hadn't left the scoring area, we caught it. Francesco looks over at Rowe, who does the, I'm such an idiot. He's not an idiot. He saw that I caught him cheating. He tried to get us DQ'd from the tournament, and he spent the next 2 days committing a stunning series of things that I had never seen before. On one hole, I asked him if he could move his ball to putter head, and instead of using the putter head, he had a 48-inch putter. He used the entire length of the putter. So he moved the ball 4 feet away. Then when it was time to move it back, he just turned the angle of the putter. Now he was 5 feet closer, not an inch or anything like that, but 5 feet from like 10 feet. And I went up to his partner, who was Billy Getty III, and I said, this can't go on. I said, I don't want to report this because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to cause a fuss, but this is cheating. This can't happen. And so finally, on the Saturday night, it ends. And I go to the man who runs the tournament, Johan Rupert, who owns Knightsbridge, which is Dunhill, and Cartier, one of the richest men in the world, and runs, of course, the Dunhill tournaments there and in South Africa. I said, Johan, let me tell you about Mark Rowe. He said, I already know. He said, everybody knows. He said, let me tell you something. He said, I'll bet you had a real hard time this week trying to figure out what to do. And what you couldn't figure out what to do is, do you call him on it or not? You know, it's his last event. You know, you're a guest here. You know, it's going to cause a ruckus. And you elected to keep your mouth shut. But you also knew that he wasn't competitive in the tournament, so that he wasn't hurting the field, actually. He said, I think you did the right thing. He said, in almost every other circumstance, if it had been where you were playing in an amateur event or this was a strictly pro event, he said, then you've got to make the call. He said, but in this case, he's not your partner. You're an amateur. You're on the other team. He said, you know, it's his last tournament. He said, we know all about him. It's his last event, and you are invited back anytime you'd like to come.
Well, there you have it. Peter, I really appreciate this interview. You are obviously a fascinating, creative, innovative guy, and now someone I call my friend. So I appreciate this, my friend. Thank you for taking this time to give me so much of yourself freely. I really do appreciate it.
Well, you know, we can do this anytime you want. You and I are buddies, and I'm a big fan of yours, and, you know, and we see each other, you know, daily on social media, and I'm keeping tabs on what you do, and I understand you to a certain extent. I see the myriad of things that you've done. I see the things that you're doing. I see the chances that you've taken. I've seen you create characters. So, you know, I identify with you in very many ways, both creatively and from an actual experience happenstance. So that makes it all the more enjoyable because I feel like I'm talking to a peer, and I feel like I'm talking to somebody who understands, and I know I'm talking to a friend. So I'll give you everything I've got anytime you want me to come aboard. And I'm just thrilled to be with you today, and I sure hope your fans enjoy this. And I sure can tell you, I did. It was just like shooting 65, dude.
Well, ditto, my friend. And as someone who probably will never shoot 65 in my life, I really appreciate someone of your caliber and pedigree hanging out with me today. And I agree. Anytime I can help you in any way, Peter, please let me know.
Well, I think at some point we need to get together and try to write a couple of tunes and see if we can do something with them. And I definitely will, you know, make sure that, you know, if I come in your direction, that I'll be showing up on your doorstep, and my door is always open to you, my friend.
Always. We would love to host you. And I can say, as the proud father of a young wunderkind golfer who's 9 and who is phenomenal, the best golfer in our Redondo Beach area, I would love for you and Max and I to go hang out and shoot a few holes, man. I would love that.
Well, definitely do it, God willing, my friend.
All right. Well, hey, much love to you and your family. I know that you've been dealing with some familial stuff. All the best healing energy being sent out to you and yours. And I will definitely tag everybody up when this goes up. Be sure to check out Peter Kessler on Twitter and on his website. It's Peter Kessler, Kessler, fans. You can check out all of his golf work that he has going up, and also his great, hilarious music that is up there too. I've been checking it out. Definitely hope that you all can get in touch with that. Thanks again, Peter. All the best, bud.
You're my man. Have a great week. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.